There are many different ways you could eat, and I personally eat pretty low carb, and I generally do not eat any grains. Some people don't have to eat like that, but I occasionally would like a piece of toast. Right now it's July. I'm filming this July 20th, and it's tomato season. I'm going to have myself a tomato sandwich. So what do I do in that case? I use this bread. And you can see I've used almost all of this. It's Food for Life. It's their Sprouted for Life bread. I avoid gluten, so this one is gluten-free, and it is organic as well. It's hard to find organic and gluten-free and sprouted. So I'm a big fan of the Food for Life company. Check them out. It's a denser bread, but if you're used to that kind of thing, if you're not a Wonder Bread person, then this will suit you very, very well, and it's delicious. I hope you like it. So lots of people choose to be gluten-free because they feel better without gluten. Gluten is a grain. The wheat plant has been adulterated for a long time in the United States. It's been hybridized. There have been a lot of herbicides used on it because they do an off-label use where just before harvest, they'll douse the crop with Roundup or a similar herbicide. And then that makes the plants easier to harvest. But then your body over time eats that food and begins to associate the gluten with the toxic Roundup. And so every time you eat gluten, your body goes into some inflammatory response. Now, there are people with celiac disease that actually cannot eat gluten or they get violently ill. Thankfully, that's not the case with me, but a lot of people have that. And any child with ADD, ADHD, any autistic kid, women who have, or men who have thyroid conditions, oftentimes will do better if they cut gluten out of their diet. And the test is to try it and see. You try it for at least 3 weeks because it takes that long to get out of your system, and then just see if you don't feel better. And this is a wonderful bread to use if you do want some bread and you are gluten-free, because it doesn't have gluten, but it has a lot of taste. Now, let's talk about why someone would follow a grain-free or a low-grain diet. My choice to do that has a lot to do with having experienced mold illness. A lot of grains, a loaf of bread, it takes no time for mold to grow in a loaf of bread. Grains do tend to harbor mold and their mycotoxins, which are the waste products of the mold. And so I try to avoid moldy foods whenever possible, and that's why I'm not a big fan of grains. But a lot of people, when you're talking about a ketogenic diet, there's no grains in that. When you talk about Whole30, a lot of people do Whole30 as sort of a cleansing diet. I definitely recommend it to people. It's a way to take the most inflammatory foods out of your diet for a month and then reintroduce them one at a time and see, hey, does something here bother me? Lots of the paleo diets, especially autoimmune paleo, will avoid not only gluten but grains in general. So a lot of it depends on the condition of your body. Going grain-free is kind of a hack, you could say. We have so much inflammatory illness in the United States. Some of that is because our food supply is so bad. And if you look at my other videos comparing foods in the US with foods in other countries, you'll see that we add lots more chemicals to our food and probably do other things. I've tried to narrow down exactly what is done to our food. It's a very difficult thing to 100% nail down, but you'll see multiple comments from people who say, oh, I traveled to Europe, or I traveled to Turkey, or I traveled to the UK, or wherever they traveled to. I ate whatever I wanted. My bloating went away. I felt fantastic. My energy was good. I lost weight even though I was pigging out. And then some commenters will say, yeah, but you're walking more. But it's not just the walking, it's the food. These guys come back to the US and immediately their skin is bad again, their gut is bad again. So our food supply is not great, but the more inflamed you are, the better you'll do if you take grains and sugar and dairy out of your diet. Those are the most inflammatory foods. Hope this is helpful.